Stop right there. I'm calling 911. Those words hit me like a siren before the siren even came. Halfway through closing my garage door, I turned to see her, Karen Holbrook, president of the Silver Ridge Estates HOA, standing at the end of my driveway like she'd caught a fugitive. Phone raised, lips trembling with outrage. "You're hiding something in there," she shouted. "This is illegal activity." I just stared at her, garage remote in hand, the hum of the motor filling the silence. "Karen," I said evenly, "this is my home." "That's my garage." She didn't blink. "We'll see what the authorities think." The wail of approaching sirens cut through the cul-de-sac, and I took a slow sip of coffee, smiling to myself. She had no idea who she had just called the police on. I bought my corner lot with the maple tree for moments like this. Shade, the smell of warm motor oil, a space to disappear into ordinary life. The garage was my sanctuary, pegboard tools, a red steel toolbox with drawers that clicked like a hymn, a 1974 Norton Commando polished after patient Saturdays, a radio tuned to classic rock that went static whenever the kitchen blender kicked on. Life narrowed to small, deliberate movements. But Silver Ridge sold a different story. Brochures promised bicycles, golden retrievers, and identical beige and gray houses. HOA rules arrived in thick binders, bullets heavy enough to stop a small bullet, mailbox designs, shrub heights, commercial activity restrictions, and, crucially, garage doors may remain open no longer than 15 minutes, unless actively loading or unloading. I met Karen on day 2. I was on a ladder, dusting fan blades when she knocked. Her smile suggested inevitability. Her cardigan sherbet, her binder cradled like a newborn. "Welcome to Silver Ridge," she chirped. "We value neighbors who value standards." I nodded politely. She thumbed through her binder until she landed on 14. 3B, exterior work visibility. "I see you have equipment in the garage," she said, like spotting contraband. "We simply ask projects remain tidy and private." I promised I wouldn't corrupt the block with adjustable wrenches and honest sweat. She laughed, but then I found a pamphlet slipped in the door crack. "Keep Silver Ridge safe," complete with a list of phone numbers, her number circled in pink. The first month passed in small frictions. Notes materialized. Best practice is before 9 a.m. or after 6 p.m. Garden hose visible from the street, trash lid not fully closed, all signed with a cheerful, accusatory looped K. I taped them above my workbench like a miniature collection of warrants. At first it was amusing. The novelty wore thin. My neighbor Leah asked, "What did you do to her?" "During a Saturday block sale." I shrugged. "One of those," she said, "the men who like doors. Privacy is suspicious here." And she was right. Karen escalated. Morning notes became citations. An envelope taped to my garage declared violations: noise, unapproved activity, safety concern. A photo showed me hunched over the Norton, the door halfway down. Caption in Karen's handwriting: "Visible work suggests commerce." I showed it to my neighbor Priya, a calm presence with lawyer's posture and gardener's hands. "This is bluster," she said. "A garage isn't a storefront because a human stands in it." I nodded. I didn't want permission. I wanted sanity. On Thursday, before the sirens, I left the garage door down for 20 minutes, while soldering a wire harness, rain turning the sidewalk reflective. Karen stood under the maple, phone raised, filming. "I timed it," she said. "I hope you beat your personal best." 20 minutes, I said. 15 is a guideline, not a curfew. Rules are rules. So is gravity. She flexed her jaw. Some of us care about standards. Some of us care about lives. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. Her response? Escalation. That Saturday morning, the sun low, sprinklers leaving wet asphalt scent. I had the garage open halfway, Fleetwood Mac on the radio. The sound of high heels on concrete echoed through the neighborhood. A threat was near. Karen Holbrook. Binder. Clutched under one arm, phone pressed into the other. "Mr. Cole," she began, "you were informed about the garage use restrictions last month? Section 9(2). "Yes, Karen," I said. And yet here you are, door half closed. Chrome and sunlight don't mix, I told her. She snapped a photo. I'm documenting this. Credible reports of suspicious activity from your property? I chuckled low. Ingens ups deliveries. Raccoons, she stiffened. If you won't take this seriously, I'll have to escalate. She didn't blink when she uttered the line that lit the fuse on the block. Stop right there. I'm calling 911. I stood still. You're calling the police because I closed my garage? She announced that I was hostile, possibly armed, while the door was half open and the sun poured in. Within 5 minutes, sirens tore at the quiet. 2 police SUVs swung into the cul-de-sac, lights strobing. Karen waved frantically, pointing at me as if I was a national threat. I took another sip of coffee, pressed the button, and the garage door slid down until only a foot of daylight remained. Officers approached my house with caution. Sir, can you step outside, please? One called. I lifted the door fully, mug in hand, and stepped into the light. Karen practically dove behind a police car. Be careful. He's unpredictable. The officer glanced between us, uncertain. Is this real, or a Tuesday in an HOA, sir? I smiled. The officers stepped into the garage. The older one looked around, calm, seasoned, unimpressed. Tools, bike, coffee, he said. No hostages. Karen almost vibrated with outrage. He hid everything. Look at him, too calm, trained. The older officer blinked. Ma'am, calm isn't a crime. It should be when it's suspicious. The younger cop bit back a laugh. Do you have any evidence of illegal activity? Karen faltered, which for her was rare. I heard mechanical noises. At night? That's what garages do, he said. She flushed bright red. This neighborhood has standards. Her head snapped towards me. Stay out of this. Trying to, I said. The officers took my ID. The older one studied it, recognized the name, but couldn't place why. Thank you for cooperating, Mr. Cole. This is a false alarm. Karen screeched. False. Investigate further. Search his property. Ma'am, we need probable cause. She stepped forward, wild-eyed. I am probable cause. I'm the HOA president. Even I couldn't stop the laugh that escaped me. That's not a federal title, Karen. She glared at me with a hatred that felt practiced. You think you're untouchable? I'll find out who you really are. That line hit harder than I expected. Not because I was scared, but because I recognized that tone. I'd heard it in interrogation rooms when liars realized the truth was circling them. When the cops finally warned her about false 911 calls, she stood in the street shaking, watching my garage door lower. But right before it touched the concrete, her expression changed. Fear, not of me, but of someone who knows exactly what they're capable of. When the neighborhood retreated into its safe suburban silence, I sat in my garage staring at my reflection in the steel door. A reflection of a man who once lived in shadows. A man who promised himself he'd never bring his old life home. But her words kept echoing. I'll find out who you really are. So I opened my laptop. Typed her name not into Google, but into a database only a handful of people in the country can legally enter. The screen spun. And then her file appeared. Empty. Too empty. A background scrubbed smoother than a politician's autobiography. No records before 2009, no employment, no property, no tickets, no past. Perfect. And in my world, perfect means manufactured. Someone had cleaned her life, someone with access. And people with erased pasts always leave shadows behind. I dug deeper. Her real name surfaced, Kara Lee Holman. Sealed records. A violent incident in 2003, hate-motivated. 3 hospitalized. Weapon recovered. Charges sealed. Identity changed. New life issued.
And then I remembered her eyes when she screamed at me. Unhinged. Wild. The same eyes from the grainy mugshot buried in that sealed file. This wasn't a woman obsessed with rules. This was a woman who found a legal framework to hide her old habits behind. HOA power was her new badge. 2 days later, my old partner Harper reached out. "Your Karen's file is weird," he said. "Sealed pre-2009, identity laundering flags, sealed aliases, and she's tied to a community initiative that moved over $100,000 through shell contractors. Her brother? Tied to a hate group racketeering case in Arizona." Everything clicked. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was using it as a front. The HOA wasn't her hobby. It was her laundering machine. So I went to the HOA meeting. Karen sat at the head of the table like a monarch. Binder open, artificial lilies framing her like courtroom props. "Oh, Mr. Cole," she cooed. "How brave of you to show up." I smiled. "I like seeing how justice works here." Her smile turned brittle. When she talked budgets, a board member named Leonard looked like a man silently begging for rescue. Later, he admitted he'd never seen a single financial ledger. All money went through Karen alone. Classic control loop. I contacted Harper again. We cross-checked her approved vendors. Half weren't real. 3 were P.O. boxes in Arizona tied to her brother. 1 was a landscaping shell used in a hate group laundering scheme. While we gathered evidence, Karen escalated. Another violation notice taped to my garage door. This one accusing me of harassment. That was it. It was time to set the trap. She needed to believe she had me cornered. She needed to catch me breaking a rule. So she'd come onto my property, document it, cross a legal line she couldn't deny. And while she filmed me, I'd be filming her. That night, as rain drummed the roof, I whispered to the quiet, "You erased your past, Madam President, but you won't erase me," because she didn't know it yet, but she had just gone to war with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I started the final phase with bait. I parked my truck halfway out of the garage with a stack of boxes labeled property files right in sight. On top, 1 USB drive labeled grant reports. Totally harmless, except for the invisible tracker hidden inside. All I had to do was wait. By noon, Karen appeared at the edge of my driveway pretending to take pictures of flowers. Her eyes kept flicking toward the garage like a moth circling a flame. I ignored her. She left after a few minutes, but the trap was already set. That evening Harper called. "We got a ping," he said. "Someone copied the decoy file at 6:17 p.m. from the Silver Ridge HOA office." I smiled. "Got her. Be careful," Harper warned. "She's unstable." "I'm not pushing," I said. "I'm letting gravity do the work." 2 days later, she cracked. Her white Lexus screeched to a stop in front of my house. She jumped out waving papers like she was flagging down a helicopter. "You think you're clever? Planting fake documents to frame me?" "Good afternoon, Karen," I replied, brushing sawdust off my shirt. She accused me of hacking HOA files. I asked her why she assumed I had her files unless she'd looked at mine. She froze. Checkmate in 1 sentence. Then she did what she always does when cornered, called 911. I let her. This time I wanted witnesses. When the officers arrived, one of them, Officer Lane, recognized me. Not from the neighborhood, from old bureau briefings. The subtle nod he gave me said, "I know exactly who you are. I'll follow your lead." "Miss Holbrook claims this man hacked the HOA system," Lane said calmly. "Do you have the device with the evidence?" She hesitated. Her confidence crumbled. Within minutes, Harper confirmed it. Her phone had accessed the decoy USB. Her office computer had copied it. The tracker had logged. Every second. Chain of custody. Airtight. You set me up," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "You chose the trap. I just opened the door." The officers took her phone. She drove off shaking. That night Harper called again. We followed the money. The HOA account feeds directly into the Sunline Fund, then into 3 checking accounts under her alias. "Good," I said. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow. Local and federal warrants." The next morning, the cul-de-sac woke to unmarked SUVs and agents in windbreakers. The raid was textbook clean. Karen stumbled onto her porch in a pink blazer, her voice screeching about conspiracies, sovereignty, and HOA bylaws like they were amendments to the Constitution. No one listened. As they put her in the car, our eyes met across the street. Her expression wasn't anger anymore. It was recognition. I raised my coffee cup. "You wanted order," I said quietly. "Now you'll have it." When the doors shut, the neighborhood exhaled for the first time in years. The next morning, Silver Ridge looked like a movie set after the final scene. Perfect lawns, still air, and doors cracked open just enough for whispered gossip. The HOA called an emergency meeting by noon. The clubhouse smelled like coffee, stress, and denial. 30 residents sat in folding chairs, eyes wide, waiting for answers. Harold, the vice president, tried to calm them. "As you know, President Holbrook has been temporarily detained." People laughed bitterly at the word temporarily. Then Harold introduced me. I walked to the front and placed spreadsheets and bank trails on the projector. "In the last 3 years," I said, "over $120,000 of your community funds were routed through a fake nonprofit, straight into accounts belonging to Karen's brother." Gasps, shouts, betrayal lighting up the room like dry brush. "She fined my daughter for sidewalk chalk. She made me repaint my fence twice. She banned my son's wheelchair ramp. I let them speak. Then I dropped the truth. And she did all of it under a false identity. Her real name is Kara Holman. Sealed criminal record. Prior fraud. Ties to a hate group." The room erupted like I knew it would. Someone asked the question everyone was thinking. "Mr. Cole, are you with the police?" I paused. "No," I said. "I'm the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." If silence could break windows, that moment would have done it. Pen dropped. Someone choked. Ruth crossed herself. "I moved here to retire quietly," I said. "Didn't expect a federal-level crime ring in a cul-de-sac." It wasn't humor, but it broke the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. News spread. Social media exploded. Karen became a national headline. HOA president arrested for fraud and identity theft. Suburban charity exposed as money laundering network. FBI director lives in quiet cul-de-sac. Harper called. "She's trying to cut a deal." Claims she was laundering for someone bigger. "There's always someone bigger," I said. By the weekend, the HOA held a new meeting under the gazebo. Sunlight where secrecy used to be. They offered me the presidency. I laughed. "You don't want a federal agent running your block party." They elected Priya instead. She immediately pushed transparency reforms. For the first time since I moved in, Silver Ridge felt human again. That night, I sat in my garage, the place where everything started and ended. Kids played outside. Someone grilled steaks. A dog barked because it wanted to, not because it was warning anyone. I held the final stamped HOA file. Another case closed. Later, Harper texted, "Nice takedown. The community owes you." "They don't owe me," I replied. "They owe themselves." As the garage door lowered, sealing away the past, a quiet settled over the cul-de-sac. Not the silence of fear, the silence of peace. Justice doesn't always sound like handcuffs. Sometimes, it's just paper sliding into a folder, and a neighborhood finally breathing again. Transparency became the neighborhood's new rebellion. Priya wanted me on the board, but I stayed in the shadows, reviewing policies, settling disputes, and quietly rebuilding the HOA's cybersecurity. Pro bono, I told her. Call it federal rehab therapy. But even peace leaves echoes. One afternoon, a plain manila envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside, one photograph. Karen, standing beside a man in a black suit at a Sunline charity gala. On the back, 2 words, "Still missing." I sent it to Harper. Within hours he called. That man beside her? Richard Hale, accountant for the Ridgewell order. Skipped trial in 2010. Disappeared. A chill ran down my spine. "You think she was still working with him?" I asked. "Wouldn't surprise me," Harper said. "These people recycle identities like paper towels." The network was bigger than we thought. That night in the garage, the air felt different, colder, watchful. My cameras showed nothing, but instinct told me something else was out there. I studied the photo again. A faint reflection in the gala window showed a third figure watching from across the street. Too blurry to ID. A ghost. The next morning, Harper emailed, "We're reopening the Ridgewell file. If you're willing, we need your insight." I stared at the message. I traded classified missions for coffee, quiet, and a repaired neighborhood. But darkness has a way of knocking, politely, on picket fences. Karen's sentencing day drew crowds. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. I stayed in the back. When she walked out, shackled but defiant, she looked straight into a camera. "I'll rebuild. People like me always do." That was the problem. She wasn't wrong. Later, Harper confirmed they found a coded notebook in her safe, contacts, symbols, payouts. She was deeper in the network than anyone realized. But for now, the web had a hole in it. Silver Ridge settled. Kids chased fireflies. Again, Priya rewrote the charter: limits on authority, majority rule votes, real transparency. At the first community dinner, Priya handed me a mic. "I'm not big on speeches," I said. "But rules are meant to protect, not control." Karen weaponized them. "You dismantled that cage. That's what matters." People clapped. Not for me, for themselves. One night, Leonard asked, "You ever regret getting involved?" "Sometimes," I said. "Peace costs more than you think." He nodded. "Worth the receipt, though." A week later, Harper called again. "Hale's dead. Warehouse in Phoenix. No struggle. Cleanup job." The network was erasing loose ends. Good. That night, the air outside felt cleaner, like the silence after justice, heavy but earned. 6 months passed. Spring returned. Silver Ridge felt like a neighborhood again, not a battlefield. People smiled longer. Meetings were shorter. Fences were painted, not weaponized. Karen, real name Cara Holman, was now in a low-security federal facility. Through the grapevine, I learned she was already trying to start a community improvement committee in prison. Some people never retire from control. Then came a letter, handwritten, from Topeka Federal. "You destroyed what I built, but you only clipped a branch. The roots still grow." No apology, no threat, just prophecy. I filed it away. Fear grows when you feed it. I wasn't feeding it. But I knew she was right about one thing. The roots went deeper. Harper called again. We found more. HOAs across the country used for microlaundering, tiny transactions regulators never see. Karen was just one gear. I sighed. "Send the files." That evening, I sat in my garage, the place where this war began. The Norton sat fully restored, gleaming like a promise. Jazz played softly as I tightened the final bolt. Karen wasn't a monster, just a symptom. Power twists people. They start with good intentions and end up worshipping their own rules. But Silver Ridge healed. We had block parties again. Leonard started Fix-It Fridays. And the neighborhood brought broken appliances to my garage. Not for repairs, for trust. Priya pushed through real reforms. Fear was out. Dialogue was in. The new HOA motto carved in the clubhouse wall said it all. Order without fear. One morning, a letter came from Quantico. They wanted me to speak to new agents about deception. I agreed. Most criminals don't start as criminals, I told them. They start as people trying to fix something broken. They just forget when the fixing ends and the controlling begins. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. You just have to listen. When I came home, Silver Ridge glowed in golden evening light. Kids ran lemonade stands. Neighbors chatted freely for the first time in years. Inside my garage, the Norton was ready for its first real ride. I turned the key. The engine rumbled, clean and steady. At the end of the cul-de-sac, a new sign stood. Community Open House. All welcome. Karen would have hated that word. Welcome. I laughed, opened the throttle, and whispered, "Permission granted." The road stretched out wide and waited. And here's what I learned. People will try to control you with rules, fear, or power. But the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to stand. Justice isn't revenge. It's responsibility. If you've ever faced your own HOA Karen, remember, patience is a weapon. Integrity is armor. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and share your story of standing up to injustice. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more HOA-inspired true dramas, because sometimes the quietest garage hides the loudest truth.